Welcome to the PROCON podcast, hosted by Paul Vogels, with expert guest interviews, case study reviews, and insightful discussion topics. The PROCON podcast leads the project controls conversation.
Hello, guys and girls. Welcome to the PROCON podcast. With a new guest today, it's Mr. Richard Wood, CEO of Safran Solutions. He will do the introduction of himself and his company a little bit later. But let me explain you why the PROCON podcast is still needed. The PROCON podcast is leading the project controls conversation. And project controls is about people, processes and tools. And in a so-called software special, we are going to focus on the best of breed tools in the market. And one of my guests is Richard Wood, CEO of Safran, which has a wonderful tool to support the project controls community. Richard, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm looking forward to this.
I'm looking forward as well.
Safran.
Yes. So I read your bio very shortly. You started as an accountant, then moved to software, and now you are the CEO of an international software company. This needs some explanation, Richard. Why is that?
Okay, you're right. I started with a BA Business Studies degree in accounting and marketing. And my vision then was to be the finance director of the largest company in the world, right? Like everybody. I pretty soon realized when I did my first couple of jobs that I was a little bored by accountancy. So I got moved off into a marketing role and then a sales role. And I worked for some big names, companies like Oracle, IBM, PSDI, who had a Maximo software product, Computer Associates. So I did 4 or 5 years in those sorts of companies, learning to be a marketeer and a salesman. And then 2014, I think, somebody grabbed me and said I should join Safran and in fact stole me from Primavera. Back in those days, Safran was just a Norwegian company leading Northern Europe with project management tools, and they had aspirations to grow internationally. So they hired me as the first international hire to grow the business outside of Norway. And that's where it all started. I moved up to CEO after 3 or 4 years doing that.
Yeah. And you brought the company from a Nordic company to an international company?
Yeah. So this year, we should sell 3 times more software in the international market than we sell in Norway. And Norway is growing. So that's a pretty good generation of revenue. We've also, though, had an interesting ride over the last 7 years since I joined, because as I joined, of course, the oil and gas price in 2014 dropped by 2/3.
Yeah. And
it was a difficult job. So my first role was to diversify out of the Norwegian oil and gas market.
Yeah, because that's the main market in Norwegian, is the oil and gas?
Well, it was. Again, we've diversified in Norway. So when I joined, I would think 70% of our sales were from traditional oil and gas.
Yep.
Now it's about 15 to 20. So we've really diversified strongly. We're very strong now in engineering, construction, utilities. We have some banks. We have some pharmacy companies. We've really diversified well. And as I say, this year we'll do 3 times more revenue outside Norway. So strong growth, and it's made us a world leader in the world of risk management in particular.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier. So if you look at project controls and project management, then we're going to dive into that later on because I have a very interesting quote from your website. If you look at a PMI, which is I think one of the institutes who set out the project management and the project controls community, they always talk about knowledge areas, and every project manager learned 25 something years ago in his handbook, the PMI handbook. It's about time, it's about scope, it's about cost. But nowadays, a lot of new knowledge areas are introduced, which, for example, are resources and risk. Safran is focusing nowadays, at least, a lot on risk. Are you then a unique company in the project controls tooling market, or what's the strategy about that?
Well, I'm sure any software company is going to tell you they're unique, Paul. But so that's an interesting question. So Safran started 25 years ago with a scheduling tool, roughly the same time Primavera started out with P6, in fact. Yep. And the 2 products grew side by side, ourselves in Northern Europe and Primavera in the rest of the world. But that's our legacy. So for 25 years, we've made a scheduling tool that manages complicated projects, and therefore a project management tool, I think.
Yep.
But 7 years or so ago, we went into the world of risk. Just before that, we put duration uncertainty into our scheduling tool. So we were strictly just duration uncertainty, but our SRA component was extremely popular. And so we decided we would develop a risk tool, and we did that very quickly. And that's now the leading tool that we focus on in the international market. But just to kind of circle back, I think project controls to me means the way you control a project. I mean, that's what it means, right? So it's understanding the relationships between those knowledge areas, between scope, duration, cost, resource, risk, and anything else that you throw at a project. How do they relate together? And what controls have you got to keep them all working harmoniously and in tune? That's project controls. Project management is then how we as humans take those controls and apply them to our projects and make decisions.
Yep.
And it's a bigger concept.
Yeah, I think that's right. So the project management is a bigger concept where we always talk about hard skills and soft skills, where the project controls are more or less the data or the numbers or the relationships, which is very smart, very mathematical. CPM, we talked about it, is just a mathematical trick, but all the project scheduling tools can do this very quickly. 100,000 activities is no exception in an oil project or in a construction engineering project. But the power of project controls lies indeed in the integration of the knowledge areas, in the integration of the project phases. Because if, for example, a risk occurs, the time will be longer to finish your project, and as an accountant, the cost will be bigger. So the integration is there. So the project management is the human factor, the soft skills, how we manage based on project controls. First quote on your website: the unified project management solution. Is that something you're moving into? Is that something you have right now? What's your vision on project management supported by solutions, by tools?
Okay, so you did ask me what was unique about Safran, and I didn't answer you, I'm sorry, but that's the answer. Because Safran is a relatively small company compared with the Oracles and the CAs and the IBMs, we write all our own software. We don't buy third-party modules and integrate them. Everything is generated by us. And that means we can put all of the project controls we talked about into the same user interface, the same software product. So when I say unified, what I mean is anything you need, all the controls you need to manage a very complex 200 activity schedule are included in the same product. So you don't have to come out of one and into an MI or into a EVM system. It's all there in the one product. And that's our uniqueness. And that's based on 25 years of experience. And that means you can deploy our products much quicker, train people in them quicker, because there is no integration. It is all there, managing the schedule in the same user interface.
Yeah, so you're becoming the best of breed on the complete focus area of project controls, you mean?
Well, that's our target. At the moment, I would say, if I'm honest, we have the world-leading risk product. So we've become known as the risk analytics supplier. But it is actually also risk analytics that we supply. Yep. The Monte Carlo analysis and all of the sensitivity analysis goes around it. The best product in the world. But of course, there's more to risk than that. Just the same way there's more to project management and project controls, there's more to risk management than the analytics. And so our ambition now is to grow broader in the world of risk management. And we have our new product, Safran Risk Manager, that wraps around the analytics and does exactly that, gives you that management flavor around the core of the control of risk. And that's going very well. But I'm sure later in the podcast, we'll talk about also where we're migrating to in the next 3-4 years. And that to me is the most exciting thing about my job. It's having that vision and taking all that we have at the moment, that world-leading risk tool, the scheduling tool, the Safran Risk Manager, and giving the market something in 3 or 4 years that will be really quite exceptional.
Yeah. And if you focus on that risk, so you say the risk module at the moment is Safran Risk, which is the quantitative, the Monte Carlo analytics in that. You are broad in it. And I've seen the Risk Manager solutions as well on your website and in the marketing events and at our customers even. are you integrating part of the process as well? Are you integrating the decision making? Because a risk doesn't fall out of the sky. There's a group of people assessing what are the risks we are going to take or are going to occur probably in the project, which might start in 6 or 12 months. So are you integrating or broadening to capture that process-related, project management-related stuff as well into the hardcore analytics part? Are you getting less geeky and more soft as a company?
It sounds like you know the answer to that already. But yes, so we would be a crazy software company if we develop software without reference to the business process that we're trying to support. That is everything to us. We need to understand what a risk manager does every day, what an engineer in a company that is producing projects with risk, what he does, how he touches and feels that risk. It's not just about the risk manager. So we do understand all of those processes. And therefore, Safran Risk Manager as a tool allows us to collect risks, to identify them, to identify them within the whole community that's managing that project, whatever their actual day-to-day job is, and then assemble mitigation strategies, test those mitigation strategies, and then encourage and motivate everyone in that company touching that project to understand that and not be frightened of risk, but be able to deploy that mitigation strategy and then report changes. So that is risk management. That is identifying and supplying the risk process you need as an endemic part of project controls, while the risk manager uses his analytics and does his thing and all the scenarios and everything in the background.
As a software company, you have a lot of bright programmers, consultants, etc. You're broadening more into the soft side of the process side, the business side of project controls, project management. I think you are in an advantage that being a small company, you are the flexible, you are the speedboat, and the IBMs and the SAPs are the big container ships. It's hard to move them, and it takes a long time to change course in that direction. Is it for a smaller, because you are a big company but relatively small to these mammoth ships? How do you capture the change and the needs of the business? Because I can imagine an energy project in the US is managed on the same way as somebody in Singapore or in Rotterdam or whatever. Yeah. How do you have feet in the field? How do you capture your user experience and your user needs?
Yeah, so as a company, Safran is like a community. It's like a family company in many ways. People have worked here a long time, and you do get, working in the office, a feeling of being part of a family community. And that's an answer to your question, because our customers feel that too. So there's nobody in Safran that doesn't have customer contacts. We're very open and out-facing, and we collect information in that way. So many of our customers in the oil and gas world, we're talking about customers like Equinor and Aker Solutions. We're talking about big transportation companies in the UK. We're talking about a bank in Malaysia. They're very different companies. But they all talk to our support people. They all talk to our developers. The developers have a hotline to many of those companies. Okay. And we hoover up information. And in fact, just this year during the pandemic, I've had several companies come to me and say that they would like to influence our roadmap. They'd like to understand what we're going to do. And they'd like to give us some ideas about how their companies would benefit if we tweaked our products a little bit. And we try to do that a lot. And we try to go with those suggestions. And so we're completely open. We're listening to our customers, and that is what informs a large proportion of our developments.
Yeah, building the bridge to where you want to migrate to as a software company. Yes. I think there are a lot of challenges from the needs, the needs of the people, the need of the project manager now is probably 35, 40 years old, has a Master of Science, where maybe the project manager 20 years ago was 45 to 50 and had an engineering degree and knows how to open a pump or a valve, etc. That's one change. From a software point of view, we are moving from a robust on-premise installation into cloud project sites, plans, etc. More international. projects are getting complex. I'm talking to customers who said, well, 5 years ago, we had a 100 million euro project that was the biggest we ever done. And now the smallest we do in 2021 is 200,000 euros. So projects are getting bigger, more complex. Organizations behind that. The contracting department used to do everything, engineering, ordering the asphalt and the materials, etc., building the road, painting the road, whatever. Now it's consortia. What is Safran doing the next years to be as agile or flexible or lean or whatever you want to call it, to support all these different changes, because you are juggling with 5, 6, 7 changing objects?
Yeah, so it's a good question. It touches on our strategy now. So we've done a lot of work on this, and at a very high level, broadly, we see 2 influences on the way the world of project controls is changing. And I think it's a revolution, Paul. I think for 25 years, the world of project controls and project management has drifted along. There have been improvements, but it's essentially been the same kind of process. I think there'll be a revolution. And I think that revolution is driven by 2 things. One is what you've just described. It's the fact that the business process, the type of projects people are undertaking are becoming multicultural, multi-geographical, and the portfolios of interrelated projects is increasing exponentially. It's just harder to manage. But the second thing, so there's a demand from the market to provide tools that allow them that visibility and the way to think in a complex way about those variables and manage them. That's one force. Yep. The second driver is like the technology, which almost by coincidence is now supplying an answer to that question. So the question is, how do we provide complex thinking for complicated projects? It's like a perfect storm. Taking both those things together gives Safran a fantastic opportunity, and quite a unique one, because there are many companies doing all of this stuff, right? But Safran is not small, but certainly not an oracle. We're in the middle. We've got 25 years of experience, and we know how to develop software. So we can take something to market much quicker. And that is what we're trying to do. Within the next 3-4 years, we are working towards a next generation of project controls product that will use those technologies, that will deliver a way of managing complex projects and take away from the risk manager and the project manager a lot of the drudge of the current data management and progress updating, and all of that routine stuff will go. Yep. And you'll have guys capable of thinking about complex issues.
Yes, thinking about complex issues. I think that's it. We talked about earlier. It's the integration part, the integrated part. That's where the strength is of the project. And the project manager needs to talk to a lot of people nowadays. Risk, financing, all these. The scheduler, of course. The rise, I think the hockey stick effect, maybe it's a Dutch term, but the hockey stick effect on machine learning, software intelligence, cloud computing, quantum computing, etc., is exponentially growing your opportunity. And I think being big enough to make an impact in the world, but be a small enough company to steer with these, it's, well, in terms of risk, you have to be very precisely on what your roadmap is, because if this is not the way forward, well, there's no changing back in this. If you go this way, the unified solution, how does Safran come to this conclusion? Is it a natural cause of these steps, computing, power, etc., and the needs of the market? Is it a natural growth, or are you the guy, if everybody says, let's go right, is Richard would say, no, we are going left as Safran?
I mentioned earlier we listen to our customers, okay? And that's why we know whether we're going to go left or right. And I'm not giving away which direction we're going to go in, Paul, I'm sorry. But so some of our biggest customers are already on this journey and they're ahead of us. So they're creating IT infrastructures that use all of the technologies we've talked about. And these are our end users. These are the oil and gas, the transportation, the government, public sector companies. They're using these things already. And they're creating new IT architectures to run in parallel with their existing ones behind their firewall. And they're coming to us and they're saying, look, you've got to get with it or you'll lose it. You've got to start developing your products that will sit inside our cloud architectures using digital twins and all the stuff that they're doing, or you won't be included. Now, we're already there. We're already working on this. And so we fit well with these customers. And they're saying to us, how can we help you? Because we want to take you with us. And they're giving us access to, for example, their data oceans of projects that they're busy building. So we can use that data to help test our concepts and the way that our next generation of products will be working. And so it's not just Richard Wood saying, everyone's going right, I'm going to go left. It's key thought leaders in the market going left, and I'm going with them. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, because I think with Safran, you have the opportunity to be the company who actually listens to the end user. If you're a real big company and try to change something at SAP,
Absolutely.
IBM, CA, whatever, they are too, well, the company SAP is 10, 20, 100 times bigger than their biggest customer. I think maybe your customers are as big as, or maybe even bigger as Safran. So I think the listening, and looking at the PROCON podcast and leading project controls conversation, a conversation is where people actually listen to each other. So is the conversation getting harder because you are growing, you have more people, or is the complete community moving in the same way? Or do you see industry-specific splits? Or
no, I don't see much sector-specific pull in any of these directions. I see most big companies building out architectures and with business processes, and I don't see any significant differences. Of course, there are some sector-specific differences, but generally speaking, we would apply our principles to all of the business processes we find in sector-wide for asset-intensive companies.
Yeah, and on a continental strategy, the US is known about the more hierarchical project management culture. This is what we're going to do. The Dutch have a word for it, polderen, which means we're gonna discuss it as long as until everybody can have a solution which everybody is happy or sort of happy with. But Europe, I think, in broad is more interacting with each other. Do you see differences in continental on that one? Because you're learning a lot with the growth.
No, I certainly see differences between cultures, but we allow for that because the technologies we're talking about are very flexible. Artificial intelligence, by its very nature, is completely flexible. So we can build a portfolio of software tools that will be used in all different cultures. They're configurable. They don't exclude any particular type of business process. So our earned value management software, for example, we learned from the US where they're very keen on EVM, but we built it in such a way that it's now built into our schedule and is used by many different business processes to manage projects. So I don't think you need to be constrained. I think you need to look in every direction and make sure that your software is horizontal enough to be used in any direction. Yeah,
you need to have the open mind. You need to be inclusive with everybody. No, good point you're touching. So the US is very keen on EVM, which is your schedule needs to be good, your progress cycles need to be good. You have to have your physical progress, you have to have your hourly progress, your financial progress. If we from the Netherlands, from Europe, look to the US, they are very mature on project controls in almost a scientific way. There's a university of project controls everywhere in the US. If you're going to look at Europe, I think in the UK you have a couple of them who are specializing in project controls. My understanding and what I hear from the community is that the project controls, project management maturity or awareness is low or lower in the European mainland than, for example, in the US. Is that something you are experiencing as well?
No, I don't think it is. There are differences, but and you're right about the US. They're very structured in the way they approach project management, and it's possibly more flexible in some of the European countries. But don't forget, the companies I deal with are some of the biggest in Europe, and they have operations in the US, and they have corporate standards which govern the way they deliver their business processes for project management, and they don't have differences between cultures. And so, no, I think I'm shielded from that. I think if I was operating more down at the small middle enterprise level, which I do operate in, but if I was more down there, I would see probably more cultural differences. I don't really get that. And my product, Safran Risk, is extremely horizontal. I mean, it applies to any complex project environment. So, no, I don't think I see that, Paul.
Yeah, so because the customers are in our profession, because we believe it's a profession. I think the Priminets of this world and the Safrans of this world, I think it's a profession. Actually, it's your business model. You couldn't pay the mortgage without project controls.
Absolutely.
So we really need to help these people. But entering new markets, you will come across people who need to learn. Is Safran also, because risk management is not something you learn at the end of a Sunday afternoon. Is Safran also getting people on board and try to have customers on board who are earlier in the learning curve on project management?
Yeah, let me answer that in a second. I just want to come back on one thing. You asked about cultural differences. I've got a great example of that. In the US, there's a lot of litigation around projects, right? Project goes late, somebody gets sued because it's gone late. And we're finding a really good market for us with our scheduling tool is that litigation market. So a forensic lawyer can say, well, if you'd made a different decision on that date, what would have looked like 6 months later? And you can rerun that very quickly with optimizing resources between the two. So but that's a cultural difference, Paul. We don't get asked for that in Europe. It doesn't happen like that in Europe at all.
But I think that's a great example, because we work, for example, with HKA, which is one of the biggest litigation consultants or claim consultants, I think, US, but also worldwide. Sure. You are familiar with them. Forensic scheduling, litigation, claim culture is something which is being introduced in the Europe. But I always make it's not a joke, but in the US, if you buy a microwave, on the manual it says don't dry your dog in it because it won't survive. In the Europe, nobody says that. Nobody has it in their manual, etc. So they are very the litigation is becoming more and more aggressive or more top of mind. And so also the people need to react. The guys who are writing the manual say, don't put your dog in it.
Yeah.
I think that's a very good example of the differences between the culture. I think it's maybe a cultural thing.
But let me just say that it's a great example of the flexibility of Safran, because these guys came to us. Well, the first customer we had came and said they needed a tool to do this. Yep. Could we have a look at our scheduler? And we actually worked with them and we amended our scheduling tool with functionality that enabled them to do exactly that. They'd previously talked to our main competitor, very, very big company, and they just weren't interested in amending their software at all for this guy. We did, and we've now got quite a few companies using it for litigation. So it's just an example of how quick we can be, how fast to the market, because we are a middle-sized company.
Yeah, but that's the Richard Wood who is saying, well, let's go left. Let's listen to that customer. Right. Mr. Customer, we are going to help you. And hopefully, or probably, we'll get your friends and your peers, etc., also in our small boat, and we might need an upgrade on the boat in the next couple of months or years.
Sure.
Is there ambition on Safran being as big as the Big Five?
I didn't hear that question. I'm sorry.
Does Safran have ambition to grow to a mammoth ship?
No, I don't. Well, it's a question I never thought about. I don't think I'd want to go back to working for the Big Five. I've worked for most of them. Yep. I like being small and nimble. So I'd like to get much, much bigger, but stay small and nimble. And that's not necessarily a contradiction. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah. Well, maybe we need to invent that flexible mammoth ship who can do U-turns, etc.
Let's work on it.
So we talked about, you mentioned something about digital twins. So litigation is something which is a new trend, I think, in our project control software. The other trend I see is BIM strategies and digital twins, etc. You work in a very asset-intensive industry, capital assets. What's the impact on digital twins and BIM, etc., into your company, into your new next-gen solution?
Well, it could have a significant impact. I mean, BIM is just one technology that I think the next generation of products will have to absorb. I don't think we'll integrate with BIM. I think it will get absorbed. I think 4D modeling and 5D modeling and all those things will become implicit within a schedule, perhaps aimed at the engineering construction market. There might be some sector variants of this next generation of tool. But it will be unified. I don't want to really build an integration to a BIM supplier. If my customers need BIM, then I'd like to have some sort of modeling capability within my tool. Clearly, you need to draw a line around it somewhere. And I have an open mind now about what I will have to integrate to as I go forwards. And it may be BIM falls on that other side of it. But there are plenty of other technologies that I will try and embrace. But at the moment, Paul, we're just in our design phase at the moment. We're working on it with some of our big customers. And I couldn't honestly tell you what the scope of project controls from Safran will be in 3 or 4 years. But I know at the heart of it will be the same schedule. But everything will impact that schedule concurrently and fire together.
No, I think a schedule is also is the main focus of a project, because you can't change time. Time is something which you consume, and a lot of really cool movies about that as well. Time is going away, no matter what.
Safran, we've tried to change time, but we failed. We can't do it, Paul, so we're moving on.
If you invented that feature, then you would be rich. You would be the biggest mammoth ship in the world. Any new trends you see on project controls from that? We talked about BIM, we talked about cloud computing, SaaS, etc., more flexible ways of deploying it, litigation, claims culture. Any things we should be aware of?
Crikey, there's lots of things, but I'd be hard pressed to prioritize any for you right now. And you do need to get fairly sector specific. Different sectors do require different technologies. So, for example, if you're a transportation company interested in rail in particular, or maybe road, then you'll find there's a requirement to schedule down to very, very small time periods. So a rail company needs to think in terms of 60-second activities. That's quite small. That kind of level of detail is something that we're thinking through at Safran at the moment, because that will be part of the next generation. It will be very sympathetic to individual business processes across sectors. But I think we'll offer it as a unified product to any sector. But it's just that you'll be configuring to meet specific needs. And that example of 60-second scheduling is a good one, I think, for transportation.
Yeah, you want to be inclusive to help the rail infrastructure, the road infrastructure, for example, but you don't want to force other people who do on an hourly or on a daily activity. You don't want to exclude them. So it's going to be a switch. Do you want the module 60 seconds on or off?
I can give you a slightly different answer to your question, which is something I'm not happy about, but well, it's not that I'm unhappy about it. But let me explain. Reporting is something that is of great interest. So how do you report on risk? How do you report on projects to your stakeholders that they will understand? But more importantly, if you're a large customer and you're building a new IT infrastructure, which is cloud-based and involves integrating together in some way many different software applications, all the asset management applications, all the quality applications, all the secure, this health and safety applications, and the project controls, they're all doing something in your organization. I think in 3 or 4 years' time, you'll be able to produce reports that suck data out of all of those different applications and build a composite report. So you can make decisions about the impact on health and safety of changing something in a schedule, what that does to the quality of the end result, and so on. It's impossible at the moment because every application has its own reporting structures. So that openness and visibility of data will drive visible, seamless, horizontal reporting. And that means, I think, that vendors like Safran and Oracle and all the other guys who are producing functional specific software will have to unlock their data.
Yep.
So that AI tools can come in and build composite reports. And that's quite a change for software companies to digest. We're getting ready for it, but it's not everybody who will, I don't think.
No, it's more or less a mindset, I think. Is the data from you as the customer or from you as the vendor or the developer of it?
Absolutely.
And I think people are, BI and artificial intelligence and all these reporting and dashboarding tools are getting more and more well known in the organizations. Managers aren't looking at paper, they are looking at a dashboard and they can click on it and they want to see the impact of what you say, a safety to a HR system and the HR system to the quality of the project, etc. So that's, I think, a mindset you should have as a software vendor, openness of data, shared data lakes, etc. We almost run out of time, so we said time is going away quicker than we like, and some Einstein said something about it as well. I think if you are enjoying it more, time goes faster. Thank you very much. Any kind of company, so don't call names out, but any kind of company you really want to look into from a risk perspective, what would be the greatest achievement of Safran? You've seen all the engineering companies, you've seen all the oil companies in the world, I think. Is there any industry or any type of company you didn't see and you really said, well, you should be looking at risk, not at Safran in particular, but at risk or at project management to help? Is that something you have a wish list?
Answer your question in a slightly different way. There's no real asset intensive sector we don't supply to. So I'm not looking for new markets in a business sense. Mm-hmm. I get very, very frustrated though by the fact that some countries, some cultures have really switched on to risk and some not at all. Yep. And I'm not going to call out the names of some of these, but there are European countries where no one ever thinks about the risk in a project. Projects are late. They don't understand why. And I would love those geographical boundaries to go away and for some of those countries to open up their cultures to allow us to talk to them about risk management.
Well, that's I think, a good invitation to take on, talk to a lot of European customers, a lot of European countries to have risk included in your strategy. Yep. Thank you very much, Richard. We're going to finish up our PROCON podcast. If people are really interested in this, this will be live on Apple, Spotify, and Google, for example, but also look at the website, PROCON Podcast, where you can even see Richard and me talking to each other digitally. Norway, Rotterdam is a long travel for 45 minutes, but digitally it's a blip of a second. So if you're at the website, proconpodcast.com, please subscribe to the blogs, which also include something about forensic scheduling in the near future, for example, but also on risk, etc. And of course, subscribe to our podcast channels. Again, Richard Wood, thank you very much, CEO of Safran. Thank you for listening, everybody, and hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye for now.
Thanks for listening to the PROCON podcast. To listen and watch more episodes, you can subscribe and access the resources mentioned in this episode by visiting proconpodcast.com. We look forward to seeing you on our next episode, where we will continue to lead the project controls conversation. The PROCON podcast and the associated resources is published under copyright to Prima Ned. All rights reserved, no reproduction of this content is permitted.